Okay, in this video, I'm laying out the 10 drawbacks that you're going to want to know if you're considering living in Daybreak, the very neighborhood where I reside in South Jordan, Utah. Now, Daybreak is one of the most prominent and popular neighborhoods and subdivisions in the entire state of Utah. In fact, it's even won awards not only locally, but also nationally in terms of its planning and design and implementation. And of course, Daybreak is a wonderful place to live. It's got so many pros and reasons why people choose to live there, but it also has its drawbacks, and for that reason, I'm spelling them out in this video so that you know exactly what to expect if you're considering making a move to Daybreak. Okay, so let's get started with the 10 drawbacks about living in Daybreak. And let's start with the one thing that I hear the most complaints about, and that's the HOA fees specifically. Now, I live in a single family home in Daybreak, and the cost of the HOA is paid quarterly, but it breaks down to $140 per month for a single family home. And with that $140 per month, I get the high-speed internet that's provided in the development, as well as all of the amenities. I think it's a great value, but for most neighborhoods and subdivisions outside of Daybreak throughout the state of Utah, this is a little bit higher. This is sometimes substantially higher than most other HOAs. So that's definitely a drawback, especially for those people that are local to Utah and aren't used to living in a master planned community. But for most people moving here from certain states, especially states like California, Texas, and Florida, where you can see HOA fees that are much, much higher. But overall, you've got to understand the HOA fees if you're choosing to live in Daybreak. And I just spelled out what a single family home costs, but the real impact of higher HOA fees really truly impact those that are buying townhomes and condos. Those HOA fees can be $300-$400 or more just for your HOA fee, depending on where you live, what development it is, and how expensive that particular sub HOA is for you. And particularly, you've got to understand the different expense of a townhome complex over here versus a townhome complex over here. Those HOA fees can be drastically different, and that's why you need somebody guiding you through the process to make sure that you're understanding not only the impact of the cost of the home, but the impact of those HOA fees, because it's definitely a major player in a neighborhood like Daybreak. Okay, number 2, let's get this one out of the way, and it's the cost of the homes. The cost of homes in Daybreak can be more expensive than other neighboring homes of similar size, and so it's crucial to understand the differences in prices from a home in Daybreak versus a neighboring community, or even one throughout the Wasatch Front, because it definitely plays a role because Daybreak is so popular. So oftentimes I hear people talking or chatting online about the negatives about Daybreak, and it definitely boils down to the HOA and the cost of homes. It can certainly be a detractor for some people, but honestly, people continue to flock to Daybreak for so many reasons. I do believe ultimately that you do get the value in Daybreak for the home, so it's definitely worth considering. If you're looking at Daybreak seriously, let's get you set up on a home search so that you can really get dialed into what are homes selling for in Daybreak. And this is done through a real estate portal through an agent like myself. I have a platform that I can share the sold data, specifically in a neighborhood. In a state like Utah, where we're a non-disclosure state, we can definitely do that as a real estate agent and broker myself. I can share with you what these homes are selling for so that you can really familiarize yourself with the market and get really tuned in to what you want to buy. It's a great resource, so reach out to me if you want to do that. All right, moving on to number 3. This is actually my personal least favorite thing about Daybreak. This is the one thing that I like the least, and that's limited parking. Now, most homes in Daybreak, if not all of them, have access to the garage either through an alleyway in the back, or the garage is at least set back behind the house. And this is really cool because it provides a neighborhood where the center of the home, the focus of the home, is not just a garage, which is definitely the case in so many suburban cities throughout the entire country and throughout Utah. It really creates a deeper sense of community, but it really limits our parking. And it doesn't help that they made the streets in our neighborhood a little too narrow, to the point where if there are cars lined on both sides of the street, anybody that's traveling through the middle of the road, oftentimes you're having to wait for other cars to bypass. I think it's my biggest negative about Daybreak, where there's just not enough parking space, and it's the one driver for me that's looking to upgrade in home. And I'm hoping to find a place in Daybreak where I can have more parking space, a longer driveway, and certainly a bigger garage. And regardless of what your goals are, parking can certainly be an issue if you're hosting events or parties, or you're having a lot of friends over. It certainly can come into play. Okay, number 4, let's get the scary monster out of the closet, and that's the HOA restrictions. Yes, it's a master plan community. Yes, they have an HOA, and yes, they do enforce it, which I actually think is a really good thing because it keeps the neighborhood looking sharp, but at the same time, it can be a nuisance. It can certainly be annoying when you're getting notifications from the HOA that you've left your trash cans out too long, or perhaps you put too many flags in the front yard. Whatever the case may be, the HOA restrictions are certainly worth understanding and knowing, and if you live in a place like that, you can see the benefits of it, but it can also be a nuisance. All right, next up, number 5 is smaller yard sizes. Certain areas in Daybreak specifically have much smaller yards than what most people are accustomed to throughout other suburban areas here in the state of Utah. So if you're willing to sacrifice that big yard to have a smaller yard and have more amenities in the development, that's kind of the trade-off. What I've realized myself coming from a home that had a massive yard and really downsizing my yard dramatically, I've noticed that the communal spaces, the common areas, the parks have really offset the need for me to have that big yard. I actually love that about it now. And so even though it was a real negative for me in the beginning, I've actually grown to really love the fact that I don't have to take care of that yard and work in the yard every Saturday. So it can be a pro and a con as well. Which leads me into the next topic, number 6, and that's we get a little congested when there's a lot happening in Daybreak, specifically around certain times of the year, and there's no time that gets more congested in Daybreak than Halloween. If you don't know what Halloween is like in Daybreak, it is bananas, it's crazy, and it's really cool. It's fun to take part in. It's definitely fun if you have a family, if you have kids. I think it's exciting. It's something that people take very seriously in Daybreak, and it honestly does get congested. So that congestion, depending on what's happening in the heart of Daybreak, whether that be a car show, a farmer's market, or a concert, or it's Halloween, it can definitely feel congested. Okay, moving on to number 7, and that's the proximity to downtown Salt Lake City. If getting to downtown Salt Lake City is super important for you, maybe being in Daybreak's just a little too far. Now, for me personally, I love being just a little bit away from the city, but still having the city very easily accessible, just 30 minutes away, but depending on traffic, depending on time of day, it can be up to 45 minutes. So if you're leaving Daybreak at 8 o'clock in the morning, or maybe even 7:30, and you're trying to get into the city, it's probably a 40, maybe a 45-minute commute. But if you don't hit that window of rush hour in the morning, it's probably closer to 30 minutes. I know personally for me, I live in Daybreak and I work here in my office on the east side of Salt Lake City, and it takes me about 23 to 24 minutes on most days. But if there's an accident, if there's congestion, depending on the time of day that I leave, it could be 30, 35 minutes. And so if it's really important for you to be near downtown Salt Lake City and to be closer than 30 minutes, you might want to look at other areas. If you're okay with 30 minutes and sometimes 35 or 40 minutes, Daybreak's a really good spot. One of my favorite features about Daybreak is that the public transportation system that runs throughout the Salt Lake County, which is actually rated as the second best city in the country in terms of public transportation, has a light rail system, a train that runs right through the heart of Daybreak with 3 stops. And that's really cool because you can pretty much get anywhere in the city if you want to by train, or you can hop in your vehicle and drive just like everybody else. Regardless, I think that's definitely worth noting if that's important for you to live close to downtown Salt Lake City. Okay, moving on to number 8, it's ongoing construction. This might be a big downer for you, but guess what? Daybreak is under construction and it's going to be for many more years. In fact, it's just over halfway built out. In the neighborhood where I live within Daybreak, it's actually fully developed, which is really nice because I don't have to hear the workers working on homes. I don't have to see the debris. I don't have to see the dirt in the streets. It's clean, it's beautiful, it's new. But if you're on the west side of Daybreak where most of the new construction is happening, you're going to have to be okay with that new construction. Now, it does also provide some of the best opportunities, especially when buying a home or building a home around the watercourse. There's a lot of cool things that Daybreak is bringing on the west side of Daybreak as well, and it's just as popular, if not more popular, than the east side of Daybreak. But it's worth noting and understanding that it's probably going to provide some level of inconvenience if you're in one of those areas that's really rapidly growing. Which leads me into number 9, and I want to talk about this one. This one's definitely a player for a lot of people that are moving there, depending on what they're accustomed to. And Daybreak, being such a new development, has much less mature trees, and landscaping, even though it's absolutely beautiful and breathtaking, it's going to take many more years for those trees to really grow and get really big. If you do look in the oldest parts of Daybreak, which are 17, 18 years old now, the trees are really starting to get big, and that's really cool. It's going to take more time for other parts of Daybreak to catch up to that. But if you're accustomed to living in a neighborhood with large, mature, tree-lined streets, it might be just a little bit of an adjustment, and it's definitely worth noting. And next up, I don't want to leave this one out. It's the air quality in the wintertime. When we have those inversions, it affects Daybreak just like every other area along the Wasatch Front. Some years we get very little inversions kicking in during the winter, and the air quality throughout the year is pretty good most of the time, but some years can be worse, and so it's definitely worth understanding that this affects Daybreak no differently than it affects the rest of the Salt Lake metropolitan area and the entire Wasatch Front. So I love talking about these things. I love educating people to make sure that you understand not only the pros, but the cons of any particular area. As a Daybreak expert, a resident of 10 years there myself, and somebody who helps people make the move to Utah each and every day, I do want you to know and understand that these negatives are real. You've got to factor these into your decision. But on the flip side of the coin, there are so many positives as well. And if you're considering moving to Daybreak, I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can reach out to us. My team and I are here for you all the time. You can find our contact information in the description below, or if you'd like to book a video call with me, you can find that link in the pinned comment on this and every video. And if this is the type of content that really helps you, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button. I would truly appreciate that. It helps me reach more people just like you. And if you're looking to learn more about life in Utah, check out this playlist. And until the next video, thanks.